Good evening, everyone. In the last class, we began the discussion of linkers. We also discussed some of the important linking words and also the functions of linkers. So I hope you understood what we discussed in the previous class. As I said, what you have to do, you need not give any explanation to the particular function of the linking words. What you all have to do is, there will be options within the bracket and you have to choose the appropriate linker for a particular paragraph which is given there in your workbook, and also which will be given in your question paper. So now let's look at some of the paragraphs or a few paragraphs which have been given in your workbook. Now look at the first a paragraph which is given there in the page number 65, and they have underlined the linkers which have been used there. So what are the linkers? I hope you are able to see that. And, but, because, in order to, and therefore. So these are the linking words which are used there in that paragraph. So let's read that once. My mother was an extraordinary person, and I should speak above all of her kindness towards me. But I will tell you a secret of mine, because I feel somewhat guilty for not having been a happy man in order to have given her a deserved happiness. Therefore, I feel I should have been more understanding of her. So now we have got the linkers there, and now read that question there. Can you identify the function of the underlined words and mention them in the space given below? All the linkers which have been given here, we have studied the function of all these linkers. These are connectors: and, but, because, in order to, therefore. So now you have to write the functions of these linking words. So you have to fill that. If you have your text, workbook, if you have your workbook, just write that. Okay, so and. So what is the function of and? Is it a contrast or reason, purpose? No. This is addition. And is addition. The function of the connector and is addition. It adds ideas. And then we have but. But is contrast. So when we contrast two ideas or opinions, or when we bring two opposite ideas together, then we use this kind of linker, that is but, contrast. Because reason, and then in order to is purpose, therefore consequence or conclusion. So these are the functions of these connectors. So I hope you understood. And now let's look at some of the important paragraphs which are given in your workbook. Fill in the blanks with appropriate linkers given in the bracket. So as I said, you are given a paragraph and there are also some options within the bracket. So now you have to choose the appropriate linker. Let's read that. Aesop, he is an ancient Greek author. Okay, that is a proper noun. Aesop is an ancient Greek author. So Aesop is a figure clouded in so much mystery and legend. It is difficult to know can be said about him. It is also strange to believe this world famous man was born a slave in the 6th century BC. Slaves were bought and sold frequently. Aesop's Greek master gave him liberty. He was impressed by his learning and wit. So somewhere it becomes very difficult for us to understand this, because here we feel that the ideas are disconnected, right? Because there is no connectors. If there is no connectors to connect the ideas, definitely it sounds disconnected. So that is why they have given options here, and we have to choose the right one, and let's fill in the blank and let's connect these ideas together. Yes, Aesop is a figure clouded in so many mystery and legend. So which is the right linking word that has to be there? Because? No. What? When? No. It has to be that. Aesop is a figure clouded in so much mystery and legend that it is difficult to know dash can be said about him. So which is the right linker here? What? It is difficult to know what can be said about him. So the first linker is that, and then comes what. So understand it. Now we understand what this paragraph is talking about. Aesop is a figure clouded in so much mystery and legend that it is difficult to know what can be said about him. It is also strange to believe, again you have to write that. Okay, you have to remember that. So here only one that is given. So remember that has to be that. It is also strange to believe that this world famous man was born a slave in the 6th century BC. And now slaves were bought. So which is the right linker there? When? When slaves were bought, sold frequently, when slaves were bought and sold frequently, Aesop's Greek master gave him liberty because he was impressed by his learning and wit. So I hope you understood this, and we'll get into the next paragraph. Alok was happy. He was selected to take part in the car race. He gladly went. The race was to take place. He was given a car kit. He could build the body of the car using small pieces of wood. Alok asked Abhi he would help him. Abhi refused. Alok did not give up. He set out to make the car. So let's fill in the blanks with the right linkers. Alok was happy. So which is the right linking word here? It has to be when. Alok was happy when he was selected to take part in the car race. He gladly went. So the linking word here is where. He gladly went where the race was to take place. So it indicates place. So where has to be there. Went where the race was to take place. He was given a car kit. So now it has to be so that. Remember always when you use so that, and after so that there should be subject and then there should be modal verb. So given a car kit so that he could build the body of the car using small pieces of wood. Alok asked Abhi if he would help him. Condition. Alok asked Abhi if he would help him. Abhi refused. The last one is, however, Alok did not give up. He set out to make the car. Look at the next paragraph. The rains had failed. All the wells and tanks had run dry. Overcome the problem, the municipal authorities sunk a number of borewells. They could supply water to the citizens. The situation was brought under control. So what are the linking words which are given in the bracket? Thus, so that, therefore, in order to. The rains had failed. Dash all the wells and tanks had run dry. So which is the right linker there? Therefore. Therefore, all the wells and tanks had run dry. Look at the next one. Overcome the problem in order to. So we have to understand when there is overcome, then there should be in order to. Right. So in order to overcome the problem, the municipal authorities sunk a number of borewells so they could supply water to the citizens. So, hagagi. So they could supply water to the citizens. The last one, conclusion. The situation was brought under control. Thus the situation was brought under control. Look at the next paragraph. In summer, the rumor of a famine swept through the province. Dash was a baseless one. The crops were growing well. The weather was perfect for a bumper harvest. On the strength of that rumor, thousands of small farmers abandoned their farms and fled to the cities. Of this crops failed, thousands starved. The rumor about the famine proved true. So the options which are given there, and thus as a result, but. So let's complete this paragraph with the right linkers. In summer, the rumor of a famine swept through the province, which was a baseless one. The crops were growing well because the weather was perfect for a bumper harvest. So we have to understand that while reading, right? The crops were growing well because the weather was perfect for a bumper harvest. But on the strength of that rumor, thousands of small farmers abandoned their farms and fled to the cities. As a result of this, crops failed, thousands starved. Thus, the rumor about the famine proved true. So as I said, thus always comes at the end, usually. You have to understand that usually when we conclude, we use thus. Next paragraph. There was a king who had one eye and one leg. That he asked all the painters to draw a beautiful portrait of him. None of them could. How could they paint him beautifully with the defects in one eye and one leg? One of them agreed and drew a classic picture of the king. It was a fantastic picture that surprised everyone. He painted the king aiming for a hunt, targeting with one eye closed and one leg bent. The story is very beautiful, isn't it? Look at the linkers which have been given there, and, but, eventually, in spite of. Let's fill in the blanks. There was a king who had one eye and one leg. In spite of that, even though, right, the meaning even though. In spite of that, he asked all the painters to draw a beautiful portrait of him. Hagidru kuda, the meaning of in spite of, hagidru kuda. In spite of that, he asked all the painters to draw a beautiful portrait of him. But none of them could. But contrast, none of them could. How could they paint him beautifully with the defects in one eye and one leg? Eventually, one of them agreed. Finally, eventually is finally. Eventually, one of them agreed and drew a classic picture of the king. And it was a fantastic picture that surprised everyone. So it adds another idea. So that is why we have used and. And it was a fantastic picture that surprised everyone. He painted the king aiming for a hunt, targeting with one eye closed and one leg bent. We'll go to the next or the last paragraph. Eating soup in Japan is more dangerous than anything else. Eating soup, one must make a fearful noise as it is a sign of appreciation. A European who tries to make such a noise will be considered an ill-mannered lout. It is not liked by the Japanese hostess. One must be careful in Japan if he or she is offered soup. So what are the linkers? While, because, therefore and however. Let's look at that. Eating soup in Japan is more dangerous than anything else. While eating soup, look at that, while plus main verb and ing. That is the structure when we use while. And there is another way, while plus subject plus and then main verb or helping verb and then ing form main verb. While eating soup, one must make a fearful noise as it is a sign of appreciation. Why? Because a European who tries to make such a noise will be considered an ill-mannered lout. Therefore, it is not liked by the Japanese hostess. Reason, right? And then the conclusion. However, one must be careful in Japan if he or she is offered soup. That's why, however, one must be careful in Japan if he or she is offered soup. So, in the same way, you'll get a paragraph even in the examination. So, now let me give you some additional paragraphs which can be appeared even in the examination. So, let's read this paragraph, and all these paragraphs have been chosen from your course book, okay, or from your lessons. The Earth University teaches Earth democracy is the freedom for all species. We all depend on the Earth. It is our duty to respect the rights of other species. These species have to evolve within the web of life. Earth democracy is a shift from anthropocentrism to ecocentrism. So, what are the linkers given here? As, which, moreover, and since. Now, let's fill in. The Earth University teaches Earth democracy, which is the freedom for all species. So, it has to be which is the freedom for all species. Since we all depend on the Earth, it is our duty to respect the rights of other species, as these species have to evolve within the web of life. Moreover, Earth democracy Earth democracy is a shift from anthropocentrism to ecocentrism. I hope this is clear. Let's move on to the next paragraph. The Monaco army is not a large army, only 60 men in all. Still, it is an army. There are taxes in this kingdom elsewhere. A tax on tobacco, on wine and spirits, and a poll tax. So, the linkers and but as also. Let's answer this. The Monaco army is not a large army, only 60 men in all. But still, it is an army. Contrast, right? The first one is, the second statement is completely contrast to the first statement. Two opposite ideas here or sentences, and that's why we have to use but, contrast. 60 men in all, but still it is an army. There are also taxes, addition, kuda, addition. There are also taxes in this kingdom as elsewhere. Bere kadegalalli iruva hage as elsewhere. A tax on tobacco and on wine and spirits, and a poll tax, adding, and that is addition. Yes, we'll go to the next, third paragraph. The Japanese who live on a hopelessly overcrowded island have to respect one another's privacy. Rather would have to. They had any privacy. They don't. Courtesy has a double function in Japan. So, when we read this particular paragraph without linkers, we really understand how important the linkers are. Because in some paragraphs you can predict, but in some paragraphs if there is no, or if there are no linkers, then definitely it confuses you. You cannot understand, especially in Japan and Brazil, in the lesson Japan and Brazil, the first paragraph is a bit difficult to understand, right? That too, we find it very difficult to understand that too with the linkers. And here, if you read this paragraph without linkers, definitely you won't understand anything. So now let's add the right linker here. The Japanese who live on a hopelessly overcrowded island have to respect one another's privacy, or rather, so it has to be or rather would have to, they have to, or rather would have to if they had any privacy. If they had any privacy, then they had to respect that. But they don't. Contrast again, but they don't. They have to do this, but they don't do that. Contrasting, right? So courtesy has a double function in Japan. Courtesy has a double function in Japan. So now let's move on to the next or the last paragraph. The special revenue came from a gaming house. People played roulette. Some of the little German sovereigns used to keep gaming houses of the same kind. Some years ago, they were forbidden to do so. The reason they were stopped was these gaming houses did so much harm. A man would come and try his luck. He would risk all he had and lose it. And the options: because, then, where, but. The special revenue came from a gaming house where people played roulette. Look at that again. Why we have to use where? Because it indicates the place where an action takes place. So it has to be where. So where people played roulette. Some of the little German sovereigns used to keep gaming houses of the same kind, but some years ago they were forbidden to do so. Again, we have to contrast, we have their contrasting ideas, that's why we have to use but there. So, but they were forbidden to do so. The reason they were stopped was, reason, so it has to be because, right? The reason they were stopped was because these gaming houses did so much harm. A man would come and try his luck, then he would risk all he had and lose it. So this is very simple paragraphs, and you'll get the paragraph in the same way even in the examination. So you'll get it in the same pattern. So you need not worry much, but you have to understand the paragraphs very carefully and precisely. So don't make any hurry or haste while answering these paragraphs, because as I said, you can easily lose mark, at the same time you can easily get mark. So that is in your hand. So you have to understand the paragraph completely. Yes, this is all about linkers. I think these examples are enough to understand the usages of linkers. As I said, you have to read a lot to understand the usages of linkers, the right usages of the linkers. So keep reading your lessons too. That will help you. As I said, the paragraphs that you will get in the annual examination, that will be from your textbook itself. So that is why be familiar with the paragraphs and the lines of your textbooks. Yes then, thank you.